The man who lived 190 meters from his own bedded. Imagine standing in a kitchen where breakfast was set, but never eaten. A bowl, a cup, a spoon resting on the table at the exact angle a person leaves it when they plan to come back in 30 seconds. The stove is cold. The chair is pushed in, and somewhere on this property within 200 meters of everything a man would need to survive a winter, a man chose to sleep under a tarp for 14 years rather than walk through his own front door. You don't know what he saw in that kitchen. The kitchen doesn't say. My name is David Laszlo. I've been doing a state assessment and preliminary inspection of abandoned residential properties for 4 counties in Appalachia for 22 years. I've walked through more empty houses than occupied ones. I've learned to read a room the way a forensic examiner reads a body, by what's missing, by what stayed, by what the arrangement of ordinary objects tells you about the last person who touched them. I don't go into these houses looking for anything unusual. I go in with a recorder, 2 notebooks, a camera, and a tape measure. But some houses don't let you finish your inventory and walk away clean. Earl Harnett died in November 2019. He was found in a structure he'd built himself on the back portion of his own property. 3 pallets, 2 sheets of corrugated tin, a rope lashing a polyethylene tarp across the gap where weather came in. He'd been living there for 14 years. The property was legally his since 1981. The main house stood at the top of the hill. Stone foundation, 1920s masonry, wide pine floors, beadboard ceiling, solid construction, well maintained, structurally, from the outside. When I opened the front door unlocked, just closed, I understood within the first 2 minutes that whoever had last been here had locked it from the inside. The entry lock was a standard American mortise unit from the 1940s with an interior push-button deadbolt. To lock it from outside, you need a key. There was no key at the door. No key inside either. I searched every drawer, every coat pocket, every surface. Nothing, but the deadbolt was engaged. He locked the door from the inside, walked out through the unlatched rear entrance, and didn't come back inside for 14 years. Think about what that means. He walked past this house every morning to draw water from the well. He saw his own windows every single day for over a decade. He chose the tarp, the kitchen table set for 1. A bowl, a cup, a spoon. No food in the bowl, but a ring of dried residue on the wood, something that had been there and evaporated over years. The cast iron pan on the stove held a thin film of hardened fat that hadn't turned rancid. The cool, stable microclimate of the room had preserved even that. The bathroom shelf, a shaving brush, a bar of soap, nearly new, and a folded towel on the hook, folded after use, not abandoned in panic, placed there by someone who performed the morning routine and then stepped out. The bedroom, bed made, pillow pressed down and lightly smoothed, not the way a person makes a bed when they live alone and have a standard they maintain not for anyone else, but because that's what mornings look like. The Bible on the nightstand was open to Ezekiel, chapter 3, verse 15. I checked. I came to the exiles who lived at the river Chebar, and I sat there among them, desolate, for 7 days. I'm not drawing conclusions. I'm only recording what was there. Under the bed, a pair of rubber boots, worn but clean. He took them off when he came in. He didn't put them on the last time he left, in the crawl space. I found 3 things that stopped me completely. 12 jars of home-canned tomatoes on a wooden shelf. Paper labels, in the same handwriting. Each marked with a year, 1989 through 2000. 12 consecutive years, then nothing. The canning stopped in 2001, a metal box containing documents. Earl Harnett's birth certificate, 1944, and a death certificate, Martha Harnett, 2001, heart disease. A funeral home receipt, dated March 14th of that year, and on the inside of the crawlspace door, scratched into the wood with something narrow, a nail, or a blade, 4 lines. I photographed and transcribed them. She used to say mornings would be better. She was right, but only mornings. I stood in that kitchen for a long time after I came up from the crawl space. I looked at the bowl, at the ring on the table, at the pan on the stove. He wasn't running from this house. He wasn't afraid of it. He just couldn't be inside it during the day, in the daylight, with the whole house around him and no one in it. It was something he couldn't carry. But in the mornings, maybe only in the mornings, he came back, locked the door from the inside, set the table, did what they had always done together. 2 cups, 2 places, then walked out the back and waited for another morning. The estate paperwork described the property as residential structure, sound foundation, moderate interior deterioration, contents cataloged and photographed. I signed it and submitted it to the court in my own notebook. Under the date, I wrote one word: endured. I never crossed it out. What Clara kept behind the locked door. The house in Pike County looked fine from the road. Gray paint, white trim, no obvious structural failure. 2 stories, a covered porch with a hanging planter, dried out, but still hanging. Someone had put it there. Someone had expected it to stay. Clara Dumas died in 2022 at 91 years old. No children. The property passed to a nephew who had never set foot in it and wanted it sold quickly. I was hired to catalog the contents and assess condition before listing. First floor. Standard furnishings from the 1980s. Gas stove and refrigerator, both disconnected. Pantry with canned goods. Bathroom, unremarkable. The second floor had 2 bedrooms, furniture already removed, and a door at the end of the hallway, locked. A simple turn latch lock, no key at the door. I found a ring of 8 keys in a kitchen drawer. The 6th one fit. I did not immediately understand what I was looking at. 2 small beds, neatly made, 2 nightstands, with duck-shaped lampshades. Toys arranged on the floor, not chaotically, not sterile. The way a room looks when an adult straightens it after a child has played. A little left out, a little ordered, just enough. There was dust, but not the dust of total abandonment. The dust of a room that had been cleaned regularly, imperfectly, the dust of someone who wiped the surface of the duck lamp once a week, because the lamp was there, and it needed wiping, and that was all. The wallpaper showed 2 areas of lifting. I peeled one corner back carefully with my thumbnail. Underneath, an older layer, darker, floral, and on it written in pencil, in a child's hand, repeated the way a child practices their own name. 2 names, Robert and Ellis, with a date written more steadily beneath them, 1961. I submitted a records request to the county birth registry that evening. Clara Dumas, born Clara Murphy, 1931. Husband John Dumas, died 1979. Children, Robert Dumas, born 1959, Ellis Dumas, born 1960, both deceased, 1963. Pneumonia, the winter of 1963, was unusually severe across eastern Kentucky. Robert was 4, Ellis was 3. Clara Dumas lived in that house for 59 more years, and I keep returning to what that looked like. Not as ceremony, not as formal grief, as ordinary household maintenance. Walk upstairs, wipe the dust from the lamp, straighten the blanket on the smaller bed, arrange the toys the way they'd been, close the door, go down and make coffee. 59 years of that. The nephew told me they knew there was a closed room. Clara had said it held things. They hadn't asked. When the house sold, the new owner gutted the room during renovation. The lamps went with the rest of it. I don't know where to put that information. It doesn't fit in a condition report. It doesn't fit anywhere I have a form for it. What I know is this: when I closed that door behind me, I closed it slowly, the way you close a door on something that is still, in some sense, present. Not because I believed anything supernatural lived there, but because 61 years of that kind of attention leaves a weight in a room, and I didn't want to be careless with it. The Cortez Ranch sits outside Alice, Texas, and my family had hunted it every November for 9 seasons straight. Good land, good people. Old Toto Cortez had been running cattle on that property since before I was born, and he knew every draw and creek bed and sendero on it. the way most people know their own kitchen. It was warm country, safe-feeling country. The first night of the season we always built a fire. All of us together, my dad, my uncle Javier, his son Marco, Toto, and me. We ate, we talked, we passed around whatever Javier had brought in the cooler. It was the part of the trip I looked forward to as much as the hunting itself. We were sitting around that fire, late, past midnight. Javier mid-story about something that happened to him at work, and the scream came from the lower trail. I've tried a lot of times to describe this sound accurately, and I'm not sure I can do it justice. It was not a coyote. I've heard coyotes my whole life, know every register of that sound. It was not a mountain lion before I could even say the words. Toto put up one hand, just slightly, like he was asking for quiet, and shook his head. It was long. It rose at the end, the same way a question rises, but too slowly, and with a quality underneath it that I can only describe as intentional, like it was constructed. Like whatever made it knew exactly what it was doing. We all went completely still. The fire cracked. That was the only sound. Toto reached down and set his coffee mug on the ground. Very slowly, without looking away from the dark past the tree line. I watched him do it, and something about how careful he was, how deliberate, told me everything. I needed to know about how seriously he was taking that. Sound. Nobody moved for a long time. We kept the fire stoked high for the rest of the night. We talked louder than necessary. Nobody said they were scared. Nobody admitted they were listening, but the conversation never really found its footing again. And by 1:30, we had all quietly agreed, without saying so, to call it a night. I went out to my blind. It sat about 120 yards from camp, tucked into the edge of a narrow sendero, a cut corridor through the brush, maybe 4 feet wide, running roughly north to south. I had a .243 and a .22 and a night vision scope that I'd used plenty of times. I wasn't planning to sleep. I just lay there in the dark and watched the corridor at 3 in the morning. Something entered the south end of the sendero. I picked it up in the scope immediately, and then I just held it there, trying to understand what I was seeing. The shape was wrong. Not the wrong animal. Just wrong, in a way that I couldn't immediately locate. Too wide for a person. Too narrow and upright for any animal I expected to find in that brush at that hour. It moved slowly, stopping every few yards, the way something moves when it's listening as much as walking. It stopped, and then it turned its head toward my blind. I want to be precise about this, because I've thought about it almost every day since. My blind had full camouflage cover. I was motionless. There was no light source. Whatever was standing in that sendero had no reason, no logical, physical reason, to look in my direction, but it did. It turned its head exactly toward where I was lying, and it held there, not scanning, not searching, just looking, like it already knew. 15 seconds. 20. And then the scream came again, from 30 meters away. Directed, the way a voice is directed, aimed at the blind, like it knew I was inside. Louder than the first one, by a lot, and lower at the start, and it built the way anger builds, or the way a warning builds when the warning has already been given once. I fired asterisk first, the .22, working across the shape in the scope. Then the .243 when I ran the .22 dry. 29 rounds total, into that sendero, into the shape that was standing there, 30 meters in front of me. In the scope, I saw the brush move with the impact of rounds. I saw dirt kick. I saw what should have been a kill shot land where the shape was standing, and then silence. A deep, total silence. The kind that fills in behind something that has simply stopped. In the morning, the three of us, me, my dad, Toto, walked the sendero from end to end. We were looking for blood, hair, tracks, disturbance in the soil, a single broken branch at the right height. Anything that said something had been there and taken 29 rounds and fallen. There was nothing, no blood, No tracks. The dirt in the center of the sendero was undisturbed. The brush on the sides was intact. 29 rounds at 30 meters, and the sendero looked like no one had ever walked through it at all. Toto stood in the middle of the corridor for a long time. He didn't say anything at first. He looked at the ground, looked at the brush, looked at the south end, where the shape had entered. Then he said, "I saw something like this once. Long time ago. My father told me not to talk about it." I asked him what it was. He looked at me for a moment. Then he picked up his hat from where he'd been holding it, put it back on his head, and walked back toward camp without another word. 20-9 rounds. No evidence, no answer. And the man who has known that land longer than I've been alive decided the best thing to do was stop talking. I've been back to the Cortez Ranch twice since. I still go out to that blind. I still watch that sendero in the dark. But I don't let myself look too long at the south end anymore. Because twice now, and I'm not asking you to believe this. I'm just telling you what happened. I've had the feeling, sitting in the dark with the scope up, that whatever I'm watching for is already watching back. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever heard a sound in the woods that you couldn't explain? Not something that turned out to be a branch, not something that made sense in the morning, something that still doesn't have an answer. I want to know how many of you are out there,